Revenge with Karen.
I knew something was rotten the moment I walked into the boardroom and saw Veronica, the chairman's botoxed-up wife, flipping through a red-lined audit report with a mimosa in one hand and a Mont Blanc pen in the other, like she was hosting a damn brunch. She wasn't even supposed to be there. But there she was, dressed like a reality TV villain at a funeral, giggling with her influencer niece while scribbling notes onto my compliance packet. My compliance packet, one I'd spent 6 months building while surviving on black coffee and the slow, bitter death of internal Slack messages. "Relax, princess," she chirped when she caught me staring. "We'll let the grown-ups finish the big girl paperwork." That was the third time she'd called me that this week. Princess. It rolled off her tongue like it was dipped in contempt and expired lip gloss. She said it in meetings, in emails. Hell, and she said it while handing me a tray of corrected vendor reports that had more red flags than a carnival cruise during hurricane season. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just nodded, took the folder, and watched her strut back to the buyer's team like she was the reason we'd hit quarterly targets, and not the PowerPoint I'd hand-fed to the finance VP like it was strained peas for a baby too dumb to chew. Oh, by the way, if you're already loving where this hot mess is going, and trust me, it's just getting started, do me a solid. Tap that subscribe button and throw a like on this story. It keeps the team caffeinated and dangerously motivated. Otherwise, we might have to start calling you Princess next. Anyway, back to the hellfire. Veronica had been advising on the merger ever since the chairman, her husband, decided that optics were more important than operational integrity. Wasn't on payroll. She wasn't on paper. But suddenly she was attending strategy calls, forwarding confidential emails to her niece, who thought EBITDA was a skincare brand, and hosting vision board sessions with the buyer's marketing team. HR said it was above their pay grade. Legal said it's not worth the fight. And the chairman, he said she had good instincts. Probably the same instincts that led her to try to launch a CBD line for toddlers last spring. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep the company from tripping over its own fraudulent shoelaces. Every time I patched one compliance leak, she made 3 more. Redacted vendor contracts were uploaded without signatures. Disclosure statements were altered at midnight, and then re-uploaded from her iPad, which was named, "God Help Me, Boss Queen V." She even tried to merge 2 payout accounts to make margins look cleaner. Forgot that QuickBooks leaves timestamp trails longer than a drunk bridesmaid's voicemail. It was like being asked to mop the floor during a flood, while someone in heels was poking holes in the ceiling. But what cracked me wasn't the interference. It wasn't even the nickname. It was what I overheard in the bathroom, 2 stalls down. Veronica on speakerphone with someone, I'm guessing her lawyer or maybe just her plastic surgeon's assistant, apparently moonlights as her life coach. "She'll be gone after the merger closes," Veronica was saying, voice syrupy sweet. "We'll restructure. Make it all cuter, cuter." That's when I knew. I wasn't just being shoved aside, I was being erased. Rewritten out of my own work like I was a typo in her glittery little narrative. And the worst part? She was almost done getting away with it. So I stopped hoping someone else would fix it. I stopped explaining myself to people who only looked up when I made their numbers look better. Instead, I started documenting everything. Every altered file, every last-minute upload, every sugar-coated lie Veronica told on Zoom with that wine mom smirk like she was playing CEO Barbie. I saved them all. I redacted the changes. I made physical copies. I created encrypted folders with access logs, timestamped every goddamn lie, and filed it under potential litigation triggers. And then I did something Veronica hadn't counted on. I read the entire merger agreement, cover to cover, until I found exactly what I needed, the little clause she didn't even know existed. But I'll get to that later. For now, let's just say the fuse was lit. And fairy tale princess? She was about to become the villain in her own bedtime story. The thing about rot is, it doesn't scream. It lingers, spreads quiet. You catch the smell first, just faint enough to make you question if it's real. That's what the data room felt like that morning, a low-grade stench of fraud in an air-conditioned conference call. I was reviewing the latest clean documents uploaded for the buyer's final due diligence sweep, sipping stale coffee that tasted like burned regret when I saw it. Again. Vendor payout record #713A, $348,000. The one that was already flagged, twice. The same one I'd annotated 3 weeks ago as materially inconsistent with prior reporting. the one tied to a supplier that didn't even exist the year before. I scrolled back through the audit trail. Someone had re-uploaded it overnight. And not just re-uploaded, reformatted. No notes. No flags. No breadcrumbs left behind, except for a tiny metadata line that pinged an IP address tied to Veronica's account. Of course, I didn't say anything right away. Just stared at the screen with a kind of slow, seething stillness, like watching a dog crap on your front lawn while making eye contact. She'd done this before. The puffed-up vendor contracts, the double-dipped reimbursements, the backdated invoices she claimed were legacy clerical errors. Only now was confident enough to do it after being told it was flagged. After the compliance team had agreed unanimously that it posed a potential escrow breach. This wasn't sloppy. This was deliberate, so I did what any self-respecting compliance officer with a slowly fraying sanity would do. I scheduled a call with legal, finance, PR, and Her Royal Highness of Fraud herself. She showed up late, wearing a white pantsuit like she was running for office in a Hallmark movie. I started in calmly. We have an issue with vendor payout 713A. It was flagged last quarter, and the current version lacks necessary annotations. This is a compliance risk. Veronica barely looked up from her phone. Oh, that one? It's not a big deal, just some clerical reshuffling. It shows an increase of 140% over the prior cycle. She sipped her water. Pen is. The buyer's team may not see it that way, especially if it breaches the materiality threshold. That's when the chairman chimed in from his corner of the call, voice tight but firm. Let PR handle the narrative. Mary, stand down on this one. I wish I could say I was surprised. I wasn't. I just smiled like someone offered a glass of sour milk and called it champagne. After the call, I sat still for a long time. My office light flickered overhead like it was tired too. That vendor file had been deliberately scrubbed. Veronica knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just rearranging numbers, she was staging a cover-up. And the board, too dazzled by her social connections and curated LinkedIn posts to care. So I stood up, went to the cabinet, and pulled out the merger risk disclosures. The official ones, signed, sealed, archived. I flipped to the back pages and there it was. Page 47, Section 9.2, the buyer's warranty declaration. Under penalty of forfeiture, each executive or officer had attested that all submitted vendor liabilities reflect true and verified figures as outlined in Exhibit C. And below that, 2 signatures, the chairman's and Veronica's. She wasn't just meddling now. She was in it, name on the dotted line. The fraud didn't just pass through her hands, she owned it. That one detail flipped the whole dynamic. She had legal exposure now. Traceable, verifiable, tied to a clause she never bothered to read. I took out a pen, clicked it, and underlined her name once. Slowly. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew this much. I wasn't going to stand down. Not now. Because the thing about being dismissed, about being sidelined by people too arrogant to spell fiduciary without Google, you don't rage, you don't shout, you prepare quietly. And when the time is right, you pull the pin. The merger rehearsal was held in Conference Room D, one with the polished mahogany table and mood lighting that always made me feel like I was attending the funeral of my own dignity. 10 chairs around the table. 11 names on the calendar invite. One was mine. You'd think that'd mean something. It didn't. By the time I arrived, the seats were full. I wasn't late. I was just not counted. Veronica sat where the VP of Finance usually did, legs crossed, blazer draped over her chair like a throne cape. Sitting 2 seats down, where I should have been, was her niece. Harper, 24, former bikini brand ambassador, now a strategy intern because she once ran a viral TikTok campaign for acne patches shaped like motivational quotes. Someone had printed her a nameplate. It read, Harper Lynn, Strategic Ops Associate. I nearly choked on my own resentment. No one looked at me when I entered. The GC glanced up briefly, stared straight ahead like he'd seen a ghost. The chairman was already mid-presentation, pointing a flowchart so stripped of nuance it could have been drawn by a Roomba. I took a seat along the wall. No desk, no mic, no dignity. Just a lukewarm cup of coffee someone left behind and a front-row seat to the parade of delusion. Harper leaned forward like she was about to say something important, and then asked, We have brand synergy guidelines for post-close cross-channel narratives. Veronica beamed like the kid just solved climate change. Someone clapped. It was then, precisely then, I stopped giving a damn about being seen. I reached into my tote bag, pulled out a slim folder I'd prepped the night before, and flipped it open in my lap. Inside, my audit addendum. Final version. Clean. No editorial notes. Just clause after clause, each one rooted in the very filings they'd all forgotten existed. Page 5. Bottom paragraph. Bolded. Any material misrepresentation exceeding 0.5% in vendor payout liabilities shall trigger Article 4.3b Indemnity Breach Protocol, including immediate escrow freeze and liability reassessment. I embedded the clause twice, once in the body, once in the footnote, legal style. It referenced 3 exhibits, all traceable, all verifiable, all already filed. Then I added something extra. I created 3 identical hard copies of the clause, printed on letterhead, each stapled, each signed by me. And on the last page of each, I handwrote the following in blue ink, verified and archived by Mary R. Halston, 10:16 a.m., June 12. Then I photographed each copy next to that morning's newspaper. I wasn't playing. I was timestamping a crime scene. You see, people think silence means surrender, that sitting in the back row means you've given up. But I wasn't out of the game. I was just switching boards, and in the background of that parade of fools, as Harper started explaining vibe alignment to the actual buyer's team, I slipped my copies into 3 separate envelopes. One to legal, one to the buyer's counsel, and one, for my own insurance, to a law professor I'd taken night classes with years ago. She once told me, paper trails don't whisper, they scream. I sealed each envelope and wrote 2 words on the front, in case. By the time Veronica stood to make a toast to collaboration and future-facing leadership, I had already set the tripwire. They didn't notice. They didn't even ask me to pour a glass, because when you're invisible to them, they think you can't burn the whole house down. That was their mistake. They forgot who laid the foundation. The last time I sat at that merger table, the chairs felt colder than usual. Not physically, just spiritually. You know when you walk into a room and the air changes, like someone's already handed out the scripts and your character's been killed off between acts. That was this. It was final table day. Not a rehearsal, not a prep call. The real thing. The signatures, the nods, the forced smiles for the press release draft, already saved in 3 folders labeled Joint Future, gave me a seat at the far end this time. No nameplate, no water glass, just the thin-lipped acknowledgement of a woman who still technically worked there. The buyer's team was present, but quiet, polite in the way someone is when they suspect they're walking into a poorly buried secret. Their counsel was flipping through a packet with the kind of frown you get from years of dealing with rich idiots and contract landmines. No one said it out loud, but you could smell tension like mildew. And then Veronica made her entrance. White blouse, gold necklace shaped like a feather, lipstick 2 shades too smug. She strolled in like she was the closing bell on Wall Street. Behind her trailed Harper, holding 2 oat milk lattes and not a single coherent thought. Veronica walked right past me, paused at my shoulder, leaned in close enough for me to smell her hairspray, and said with syrupy venom, "Relax, princess. You're about to be fired." No one else heard it. That's how she wanted it. Personal, quiet, surgical. I didn't blink. Just reached into my bag and pulled out the sealed audit folder. Thick, weighty, tied with a red string because I'm dramatic and I earned it. I stood, walked down the length of the table like a waitress delivering the final course, and set the folder gently in front of legal. Direct eye contact, no words, just the transfer of power. Then I turned. Veronica tilted her head and gave me a mock wave. Pitying, like I was walking away from relevance and into obscurity. I didn't wave back. I didn't need to, because she didn't know what was in that file. She didn't know that Clause 4.3b had been cited not once but 3 times, with full cross-reference to signed disclosures. She didn't know that her late-night edits to the vendor contracts had been time-stamped, screenshot, and logged. She didn't know that legal already had 1 version, that buyer's counsel would have another in their inbox within the hour, that the file had teeth, and that it was already chewing. I walked past the receptionist, who gave me a sad little smile like I was headed to HR purgatory, and pushed open the glass doors to the lobby. The sun hit me like a slap, not warm, just blinding. I didn't look back. Let them toast. Let them posture. Let Veronica play queen for 1 more hour. Because the moment those lawyers hit page 5 of that addendum, the smirk would slide off her face like melted buttocks. And she'd realize, maybe for the first time in her privilege-padded life, that not all consequences come from raised voices. Some come from quiet exits. Some come from sealed folders. And some come with red string. It started quietly, not with a bang. not with a slammed fist or shouted curse, just a small sound in a big room, the click of a red pen cap being pulled off by a man who had spent his entire career pretending to be bored. Buyer's counsel was already 3 hours into the review when he saw it. He'd flipped through glossy charts, skimmed over bloated talking points, rolled his eyes at the obligatory forward momentum fluff stuffed into the joint statements. But then he reached a plain, unassuming addendum tucked behind Exhibit F. 5 pages, no header art, no logos, just black text on white paper. One clause in bold, buried on page 3. He adjusted his glasses. Read it once, then twice. Any material misrepresentation of vendor liabilities exceeding 0.5% shall trigger immediate freeze of all escrowed funds under Section 6.1. Furthermore, such misrepresentation shall void post-merger indemnity protections under Article 4.3b. His pen stopped midair. He didn't speak, just turned to the buyer, Arthur Langley, Roman 3, real estate heir turned clean energy crusader, and slid the page toward him like it was radioactive. Langley leaned forward. Read the clause. Slowly, then again faster. His mouth opened like he was going to ask a question, but no sound came. Then he looked at the bottom of the page. The signature line, there it was. Veronica Denton, the chairman's wife. The socialite, self-appointed strategic advisor. The woman who'd insisted on skipping the indemnity review because she didn't speak lawyer. Langley's jaw tightened. Not rage, not yet, but the early symptoms, like a slow boil under skin. He pressed the call button on the table intercom. Get Alyssa from internal counsel. Now, the other buyer reps, who until that moment had been smiling politely through slides about synergy and pipeline alignment, looked up like someone had pulled the emergency brake. Counsel tapped the addendum again. Did anyone flag this clause before? Silence. Then a tentative voice from the finance lead. I thought that was boilerplate. It's not, counsel said flatly. This clause has teeth. He leaned back, eyes narrowed, and someone buried it. Intentionally. The CEO of the selling company, Denton himself, hadn't arrived yet. Still en route, probably perfecting his empty handshake speech, and mentally composing a LinkedIn post about transformative partnerships. Too late. By the time he showed up, half the room was whispering into phones. The head of compliance for the buyer was cross-checking the vendor records. Alyssa from legal arrived, read the clause, and uttered the kind of exhale you don't hear often from someone who bills $1,200 an hour. Jesus, she said. Someone from the audit team pulled up the vendor payouts. Cross-checked the flagged ones. Line item 713A, she murmured, over the 0.5% threshold. Grossly. We've got at least $200,000 overreported across Q2. Verification, logged, timestamped. 2 different versions uploaded in the last month. One scrubbed, and the person who signed off, she flipped the file around. Veronica Denton. Langley stood up, and a hand through his hair and said the words that changed the tone of the entire deal. We're not signing today. Every head turned. Pause everything. We're going to legal. The CFO tried to protest, but it was like yelling underwater. The sound didn't travel. Langley looked around. Who prepared this clause? Silence again. Then Alyssa said, Mary Halston. She's listed as the audit lead on the metadata tags. And she timestamped the clause. Langley nodded once. Find her. Didn't shout, didn't throw a chair. But the fear, you could feel it, palpable. Like the lights were dimming just a little in the room. Every person who had smiled at Veronica's stupid jokes started mentally scrubbing their own names from emails. And somewhere, across the city, Mary was drinking her coffee black, watching the morning traffic slide by her window. She didn't know what time it was in the boardroom, but she knew what time it was for them. The fuse was burning. They'd finally noticed the smoke. The closing session was supposed to be a formality. Smiles, nods, the ceremonial clatter of Montblanc pens, signing 10-figure dreams into reality. Cameras were booked. Champagne chilled. Veronica had even arranged for some junior staffer to live-stream the board's toast to Vision 2026. But the buyer never raised his glass. Arthur Langley didn't even sit down. Instead, walked into the room already on the phone with external counsel. His legal team flanked him like a tactical unit, faces stone cold, arms full of binders nobody else knew existed. Veronica opened her mouth to greet them, but Langley held up a hand without making eye contact. We're pausing today's close, he said calmly. Veronica blinked. I'm sorry, is there a scheduling? Langley looked at his team. Would someone please update the board? One of his lawyers stepped forward and dropped a single-page printout onto the center of the table. The font was small, the margins tight, but it spoke louder than anyone in the room. Clause 4.3b, the lawyer said, citing escrow nullification and indemnity forfeiture tied to misrepresented vendor liabilities. The chairman squinted at the document like it had personally betrayed him. What exactly does this mean? It means, Langley's counsel said, breached your own terms, and your wife signed it. Dead silence. Then a shuffle. Harper, Veronica's niece, stood from her seat near the buyer's team. For weeks, she'd been perched there like a decorative plant, smiling, posting blurry photos of spreadsheets to her Instagram stories with captions like #bosslife and making moves. A member of Langley's staff leaned down and whispered something in her ear. Her face fell. She was quietly walked out. No scene. No protest. Just an uncomfortable clicking of heels as she was removed from the grown-up table. Veronica stared straight ahead, expression frozen somewhere between rage and buttocks paralysis. Langley finally looked at her. You signed something you didn't understand, and you didn't think it mattered. The chairman, face pale as drywall, cleared his throat. Let's be reasonable. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. We can loop in Mary, she's not taking calls, one of the aides said. Already tried. 3 times? That's when the panic cracked open. The CFO whispered something to legal. PR started pulling up crisis templates. The VP of operations started typing so fast on his iPad it sounded like a woodpecker having a breakdown. The chairman stepped aside and pulled out his phone. Dialed, waited, no answer. Dialed again. Voicemail. Mary, it's Denton, he said, voice suddenly soft, like a man trying to make peace with a guard dog he used to kick. Really appreciate it if you could join us to clarify some things. No pressure, of course. Just call me back when you get this. He hung up. No one said anything. Veronica looked down at her lap, fingers twitching near her phone like she wanted to post a selfie just to pretend the room wasn't collapsing. Langley sat down finally, not relaxed, just done. We're pausing the deal indefinitely, he said, until we finish our investigation. The board scrambled, voices overlapping, trying to soften the blow, trying to redirect blame, trying to spin. Langley didn't look at them. He looked at the clause, and he looked at the signature. The one Veronica scrawled without reading. The one Mary saw weeks ago and underlined in blue ink. The boardroom devolved into murmurs and muted panic. The kind of chaos where no one wants to be the first to stand, because standing means you're the one expected to fix it. Across the city, quiet cafe near the river, Mary sipped her coffee and scrolled through the news. Her inbox pinged with a fresh message. Langley legal team request for call availability. She didn't smile, she didn't gloat. She just closed the tab and ordered another espresso. Mary let the phone ring. Again. Voicemail. Again. Denton's voice sounded smaller each time, like someone trying to fold themselves into an apology without ever saying the word. Mary, we just want to clear the air. There's been a bit of confusion, and look, it would help the board if you could give a quick statement. Nothing formal, just clarify a few things. Click. She didn't save the message, didn't return it either. She had a better meeting to attend. The buyers had reached out 2 hours after the merger was halted through a quiet back channel. A junior associate named Karim left a simple, elegant voicemail. Miss Halston, Langley's team would like to speak with you privately. Off-site, whenever you're available. She chose the coffee shop on 9th and Leland. Neutral ground, no security guards, no branded water bottles, just espresso, too much daylight, and no memories of fluorescent-lit humiliation. She arrived early, no makeup, no pearls, just a sharp blazer and the manila folder that had somehow detonated a multimillion-dollar deal. They arrived on time. Langley. Karim. One more man she didn't recognize, likely legal. All 3 wore the polite exhaustion of professionals forced to clean up someone else's glitter-glued disaster. Langley opened with a nod. Thank you for meeting us. Mary returned it. I figured you'd come around eventually. He didn't smile, smart man. Karim placed a tablet on the table. We've reviewed your addendum. Impeccable formatting, by the way. Mary shrugged. I've got a typo problem. Langley leaned in, arms crossed. Can you walk us through it? Everything. From the start. He slid the manila folder across the table. Timeline, edits, upload logs. I saved the metadata for every modified file going back 6 months. There's a printed index with hashes that match the audit trail. Legal glanced at the documents. Eyebrows raised. He flipped to page 3. You time-stamped these with daily ledger entries. I don't like surprises, Mary said. Langley tapped the table once. and the clause itself, 4.3b, added during the risk alignment phase, buried on purpose. I wanted it seen by smart people, not decorative ones. He nodded slowly. So Veronica Denton signed off on fraudulent figures. Twice. Mary tilted her head and told me to stand down both times. The air at the table shifted. Legal muttered something to Karim, who nodded. Langley exhaled through his nose. We're restructuring the acquisition team. Veronica and her niece are no longer in scope. Mary waited. He didn't let the silence stretch. We'd like to retain you, not full-time. Consultant, clean up the merger filings. Validate all vendor relationships. You'd report directly to me. She blinked once. From your side? Yes, he reached into his briefcase. We've prepared a provisional offer. She didn't reach for it. Yet, this isn't personal, she said. I'm not interested in revenge. We know I don't want to humiliate anyone. We wouldn't ask you to. But I want access. Full. No filters. I don't clean messes unless I see the whole dumpster fire. Karim smiled for the first time. You'll have it. Mary nodded. Finally took the offer sheet. Didn't open it yet. Just held it like the weight meant something. Langley stood, extended a hand. She didn't shake it, not yet. She had one more thing to say. I didn't tank your deal. They did. I just gave you the receipt. Then she shook his hand, firm, no smile, no small talk. Just like that, Mary was back in the game. But not on their side. She'd switched boards, and this time she was writing the rules. Veronica found out the hard way when her keycard stopped working. She was trying to enter the 19th floor boardroom, latte in hand, heels clicking like they owned the damn tile. Badge, beep, red light again, beep, nothing. The receptionist, a junior who once cried during Q1 reviews, didn't even look up, just pointed to the security phone and went back to typing like it wasn't her problem anymore. Veronica stood there blinking, tapping her acrylics on the glass like the world had frozen. Like someone forgot to tell her she was no longer royalty. No one forgot. Upstairs, on a very different floor, Denton was staring at a letter. A real one, printed on heavy stock, delivered by courier. He read it 3 times. Langley's legal counsel had made it painfully clear. Due to the documented authorization by Miss Veronica Denton of materially inaccurate vendor disclosures, see signatures on Exhibits C and F, your firm is in breach of escrow conditions under Clause 4.3b. Effective immediately, we are suspending integration planning and evaluating alternative closing structures. Translation: your wife sank your ship. We're now considering docking elsewhere. He didn't respond right away. Just stared out the window like the skyline might offer forgiveness. It didn't. His phone buzzed, a new email. Joint recipients, the entire board. Buyer's counsel had sent it. Subject line, clarification of audit materials, thank you, Miss Halston. Mary's name, first line. The email was short, polished, lethal. We appreciate the diligence and clarity provided by Miss Halston. Documentation and clause construction have proved instrumental in preventing liability entanglements for all parties involved. We consider her analysis foundational to future cooperation. The board chair replied, acknowledged. No one CC'd Veronica. She didn't know about the email until later, when she tried logging into her work portal and got the message. Access revoked. Contact system admin. She did. IT told her to speak to HR. HR told her she'd been offboarded. She called Denton. He didn't answer. He was busy, anyway, sitting in a closed-door meeting with legal and 2 of the more panicked board members, trying to draft a statement that didn't sound like the Titanic blaming the iceberg. Down the hall, someone had boxed up Veronica's desk. 2 interns were arguing over what to do with her vision board that said market like a celebrity. They tossed it in the recycling. Meanwhile, Mary sat at her new desk, temporary, but hers. Clean, no clutter, a laptop. A folder labeled Post-Merger Risk Control Draft 1. She opened her inbox, there it was. The thank you email, forwarded by Karim with a smiley face she'd pretend not to appreciate. She didn't need applause, didn't need headlines. She had something better. Silence. That beautiful, bureaucratic silence that follows real consequences. The kind that isn't shouted, it's logged, archived, sent with tracking. She took a sip of her tea, Earl Grey, steeped strong. Veronica had done the talking. The clause had done the rest. The boardroom was colder this time. No flowers, no catered breakfast, no Veronica with her feathered pen and filtered face. Just hard light, heavier silence, and the weight of too many people trying not to look guilty. Mary arrived precisely at 9:01. Not early, not late. Right on time because she set the time now. Langley was already seated at the head of the table, flanked by his legal team. On the other side, Denton sat slouched like a man who'd aged 10 years in a week. His tie was too tight. His voice hadn't returned yet, but the bags under his eyes had set up permanent residence. Mary didn't nod when she entered, didn't smile. She walked the perimeter of the table like a perimeter check. Her heels didn't echo, they punctuated. There was a new nameplate at her seat. Mary R. Halston, external audit consultant. Not compliance, not manager, no more back row. She sat at the table now, above the table. Langley opened the file without preamble. Before we proceed, he said, flipping to a specific page, I'd like to read into record the clause previously buried in the vendor disclosure packet. He read it slowly, clearly, like a courtroom verdict. A misrepresentation of vendor payout liabilities exceeding 0.5% nullifies all post-merger liability shields under Article 4.3b and shall trigger immediate escrow lock, pending audit review. Then he held up the physical document. A single page, corner stapled, highlighted in yellow. One signature sat at the bottom. It was bold, flowery, decorative. Veronica Denton, he read aloud. He paused. Then, quieter. So soft it cut deeper. Her hand began to shake. No one laughed. No one moved. Denton blinked hard. His mouth opened once, then shut. The man who once bragged about closing 9-figure deals without blinking suddenly looked like a child caught with a broken heirloom and no story left to tell. Langley didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The clause had already done the talking. He turned to Mary. Miss Halston, your review of the corrected records. He slid her copy of the audit report across the table. Clean, verified, post-rectification only. All flagged discrepancies have been documented, reconciled, and attached with metadata verification. Karim added she also submitted a compliance reform roadmap. We suggest immediate adoption. Langley nodded. Good. Then let's proceed. The buyers signed first, then legal. Then the newly humbler board. One by one, their pens scratched across paper, silent confessions hidden in contract ink. Mary didn't sign. She'd already done her part. She watched Denton last. His hand trembled slightly as he pressed pen to paper. She could almost hear Veronica's voice echo in his head. Relax, princess, you're about to be fired. Funny how fast the crown melts when the kingdom crumbles. When the final page was turned, Langley looked to Mary. Anything else? She stood, straightened her jacket, and glanced around the room. Some faces flushed, some wouldn't meet her eyes, but none dared interrupt. She took one breath, then said, let's get this done correctly. This time, without fairy tales, and walked out. No applause, no parade, just the sound of the door clicking shut behind her and the silence of a room that finally understood who had written the ending. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.